Hi, and a very, very good afternoon to all our viewers. My name is Anirudh Sen, and I happen to be the Chief Business Officer for WiTalks. This afternoon, we have a very, very special guest on yet another edition of WiTalks. She is none other than Sarika Puri, an HR professional and an HR leader with 13 years of rich experience across organizations like Lenskart, like Executive Access, like Spencer Stewart. And she is currently the Assistant Vice President Talent Acquisition for BYJU'S, who our viewers will recognize is today a household name. In addition to her responsibilities as the AVP Talent Acquisition, she also takes on the responsibility for training and development, as well as employee engagement. She takes great pride in the fact that over the last 2.5 years, she has built brick by brick this talent acquisition team at BYJU'S. So with that, I would like to very warmly welcome Sarika on the show.
Thank you so much,
Hi, Sarika.
It's a pleasure to be here. Hi.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for all our viewers and for me personally and for WiTalks as an organization, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. So before we actually dive in and I start asking you about your journey, I want to begin by making a comment, and this is something that everyone who has come in any form of association with you talks about you, which is this innate sense of energy that you exude and that you bring to the table, or you bring to any conversation, or you bring to any kind of interaction. So where does this energy emanate from, and how has that sort of contributed to you in your life, personally and professionally? And then, of course, we will go through your journey.
Of course. Thank you
Over
so
to you,
much.
Sarika.
Thank you. Thanks for recognizing that and to start the talk with this. So my philosophy in life is that everything starts from your own life force. I've been practicing Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism for over 10, 11 years. And there we talk about the Buddha nature that everybody possesses. But how do you tap into it and how do you find your enlightenment is the journey that we have to go through. So for me, I believe that everything starts with you and then you're able to manifest it. And that's how the universe responds back. So I get my energy all from within because I've realized my purpose in life and understood my ikigai and make sure that I like to maintain a good balance. And so with that, you end up enjoying every conversation, you enjoy every single day, you make the most of it. And that's the energy that ends up, kind of transmitted to everybody around you. So that's my short answer.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, while, some of us may have been privy or maybe privy to knowing a bit about you, I think for the benefit of our viewers and the benefit of the audience, why don't we begin with you sharing a bit about your journey?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I have always been a learner who seeks new ways and to solve existing and emerging problems. Going back to my journey, I'll put it briefly that I'm a big believer in lifelong learning. So after my MBA, I wanted to specialize further. I went to New York at Columbia University, and that experience was absolutely life-changing. I have about 12 plus years of experience, and I've had the opportunity to work with some of the biggest disruptors and legacy brands. In 2019, I joined BYJU'S in Bangalore, and this was right at the cusp of the pandemic, just changed the world as we knew it. So with the pandemic bringing in the importance of working and learning online, we witnessed industries shift to a completely virtual medium of working. And since then, we have realized the importance of talent acquisition online and offline, not meeting candidates only in person, but really coming up with new tools and techniques to understand and evaluate the best fitment. I have experience in talent acquisition and also in employee engagement, in training and development, in coaching, in mentoring. And I personally like to be invested in ensuring that team members become future leaders. I personally invest into making sure what skill sets that they would need to bridge, and I help them bridge that gap to make sure that they do well in the team and they grow professionally. So this is a little bit about my journey. I have lived in a few countries. I was born in London. I came to Delhi to do my school and college. And then after I got married, I moved to Bombay. I went to New York, Bangalore, and back to Delhi. So that's a great start for us to talk about. Just giving you a brief about where I started and where I am today.
Wonderful, Sarika. In fact, one of the things that I probably left out in the beginning is the fact that you've also been teaching piano for the last 15 years over the weekends.
Yes,
and
right.
then, you're also possibly trained with the Royal Trinity College of London.
That's
So
right.
why don't you share something about that with our viewers?
Absolutely. So I understood when I was like young that I'm a very creative child. I loved music, I loved dance, I loved artwork. I've tried my hands at various things. So music was something that I decided I wanted to take it up and spend more time. So when I was in high school, I started learning at a school in Delhi. And within 2 or 3 years of learning, the principal of the school asked me if I wanted to start teaching part time. And at that time, I was still studying in college, my undergrad and graduation. In undergrad, I was as a part of the dance team, and I used to have dance practices. So along with that, teaching music was a little bit challenging. So I started taking it up on the weekends, and I was a part-time teacher. I was on probation, and I was mirroring the senior teachers at the school. I was so young, but I was teaching students of all age groups, starting from, I would say, as young as 4. And I would say there's no upper limit. I've even taught a student of about 70, 75 as well. I was a kid then. And so, but still, it's all about the technique and the skill and of the art of understanding the individual. So that's, I think, my specialty. Usually teachers would have a certain age group that they would focus on, but for me, I've been able to connect with all ages, whether teenagers or their 20s or 30s. It's about how you mirror the individual and you understand what they need in that moment. So I started teaching when I was in college, post graduation, on the weekends, and got my pre-placement offer to join Executive Access as my first company. And I didn't want to give up music. So I used to go to office Monday to Friday, and Saturday, Sunday, I would go to the music school, and I continued teaching. I'm trained by Trinity College of London in practical and in theory. And I still continue to teach online and offline both. Every country and every city that I've lived in, I've kept up my passion, kept up my hobby. And I founded my own company called Soul Piano a few years ago. And that's something that I continue because it feeds my soul on the weekends.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm sure, this is music to the ears of all the viewers who are sort of, you've tuned in today. So I'm going to now not necessarily switch gears, but get a little deeper into the conversation. And one of the things that I picked up initially when you spoke about, your background, how you've sort of led your life. One thing that came across is that you've always strived to lead a very balanced life, right? You mentioned yourself being a creative person. At the same time, some of those who either follow you, who have worked with you in your career, have said that as an individual, they find you both extremely structured and strategic at the same time. So, how do you sort of explain, the balance, the importance of maintaining balance in your life, and how is it that you can look at something very structured and strategic at the same time?
Okay, sure. So I would like to say that I've been ambitious since I was young, and I think that's why I ended up taking up the teaching job, and as well as just starting immediately after I did my education, undergrad, post graduation, straight away went to starting full time in executive access. And every city that I had to move to for personal reasons, I made the most of it based on the situation. As in the sense that in the US, there was visa constraints, but still taking up internships and working and studying. So making the most of every situation is something that I think comes naturally to me. And I've just learned to sharpen that skill set. And along with that, just being being a good planner. I make sure that the day before I set the right intention on what my tasks would look like, what will my day look like, what will my week look like. Sometimes I go to the extent of what will the quarter look like. And of course, that doesn't mean it's set in stone. Of course, if you have to make the changes as required as you go along the way. But it's really important to prioritize and to understand what is important to be covered on a daily basis. For me, a balanced life means taking care of yourself first, and then taking care of everybody around you. If you're unable to take care of yourself, then you're not going to be able to support everyone in every area of your life, whether it's personal, whether it's professional, or anybody else. So I start my day with meditation. I make sure I give myself that time. So it's important to strengthen the mind. So I meditate, I exercise. This is on a daily basis, and then I make sure they have intentional movement. And when I'm starting my work, I set the right tone for the day, that this is what I need to cover, the people I need to meet, what is the absolutely high priority tasks for the day. And I make sure that I make the best of the time during the day, whether it's driving on the way to office, on the way back. What can I do? Can I listen to a podcast? Can I listen to some music? What mood am I in at this moment? Being present in the moment is something that I've learned over the years. Because if you want to do too many things and you want to achieve a lot, sometimes it gets difficult for you to play catch up with it. And others might not understand as much as you might. You need to tune into yourself, and plan your day and plan your thoughts better. So for me, a balanced life is looking after yourself, meditating, exercising, focusing on your work, being productive, and being present in the moment. And then ending the day by putting your phone aside, technology aside, giving yourself that 1 hour before sleeping where you have family time, you're sitting with your loved ones, and you're really exchanging all the good things that you've accomplished in the day, and falling asleep thinking of gratitude, being grateful of what has taken place today and what am I looking forward to tomorrow. So that's just my philosophy.
Wonderful. I mean, obviously, as an individual, you come across as someone who's very evolved. And the one thing that you haven't mentioned, which I think is very evident to me, is you obviously you sort of manage your time exceedingly well, because you have so many interests. You're always prioritizing, and at the same time, you wish to be in the moment, right? And learning in and taking in whatever you need to take in at that particular moment. So I think that's absolutely wonderful. I just wanted to let you know, and I'm not going to necessarily disrupt the flow of this conversation, but already we are getting a couple of great questions, but I will reserve them for later during the show.
Okay.
Moving forward, and staying on the same theme, you spoke about somewhere about the need or the desire to keep growing, and also acquiring newer and newer skill sets to keep pace with the future, right?
Right.
And you also spoke about being ambitious as an individual, being creative as a child, and therefore probably creative as an individual. So ambition, creativity, the need to grow yourself and to learn new skills. How does this all sort of come together?
Okay, that's a great question. I'm going to try answering it by being more precise, because there's so many instances that I've gone through and just trying to think of the best example. So what I would say is that given my background, I've worked with organizations that have been fast-paced as well as structured. And I deliberately wanted to work in different organizations because, again, that takes you out of your comfort zone and it allows you to learn new skill sets and new roles and responsibilities. So for me, growth and learning and keep sharpening your skills, I feel it's a day-to-day process. So every person you meet, every conversation you have, for me, it's about making that connect, building a relationship, and learning something new. Every candidate I speak to, anyone I network with, is understanding what they're doing, what do they bring to the table, and then seeing what can I pick up from that, and then that's something you could share with another person you speak to, because anything that I learn, anything that I'm practicing, I would like to preach it, and preach by example, not just by giving a lecture or a talk, but really showing by example. And I feel that's the true form of teaching someone or being an example or an inspiration to anyone, is when you're showing actual proof from your own life. So the skill sets that I have learned over the years is that I would say using systems and platforms and HRMS tools, used Q&T, Quest, File Finder, SuccessFactor. These are the tools that we use as a human resources and talent acquisition professional to ensure that you have all the information, that every conversation has been put down in the system with each candidate, to make sure the process is extremely smooth. We give a good experience to the candidates as well. And that if they come back 2 or 3 years later, everything is on the organization system. So how do you adapt to that, and how do you adapt to new skill sets that are required, every place you go or every role that you're in? You could be in the same organization and maybe you've been asked to do a different role. You'll only be given those opportunities when you're showing the employer that you're ready for change, you're ready for something new, you're ready for something big. So you usually get the position once you've already demonstrated the abilities and the capabilities, and not the other way around, in my experience. So how do you keep adapting and learning? You keep up with the business trends, with the knowledge, with you have LinkedIn as a great platform where you can follow top leaders and you learn from their experiences. And then you should, for me, it's also been mentoring a lot of students, a lot of younger professionals. And I feel that you're always a student. You're not just a teacher. You're always learning. So even when I'm coaching and mentoring younger professionals, I learn so much from them. And for me, I feel I never stop being a student. That's also is sharpening your skill sets. You're learning something from anyone around you, and not to feel like I've now reached a stage where I'm at the top management and it's I know it all. I don't think that I would ever get to that stage. You keep learning, you keep growing, and it's the mindset that is the most important. So learning new skills, whether it's technical, learning new assessment tools, and doing different assessments for candidates, and whether you would different ways of interviewing as well. Like no two interviews are the same for me. It's not structured. It's not a question and answer. It's really a conversation, and you're understanding the individual, bringing out the best of the individual, and checking the fitment, whether it's cultural fitment, whether it's a technical fitment, behavioral fitment. Again, that as being a talent acquisition person, I'm giving more examples on that front. But I'm sure all of these people skills come very handy in any profession in a company.
Wonderful. So thank you so much for sharing, in so much of detail. There is this question that has sort of come up, and I'm tempted to ask because it is a very good question. So I'm going to go slow, and therefore give you some time to prepare. The first one should be pretty easy. And it's asked by the same individual. It says, what kind of problems do you like to solve?
Okay, very interesting. I really enjoy solving complex problems. So what I would do is I look at the big picture, and I would like to break it down into smaller parts, and I like to take a perspective of people around me. I definitely have my own beliefs and my own value system and my own idea, but I don't take a decision in silo. I prefer, as a leader, when you're working with a team, let's take the opinion of the people who are working on the ground, who are actually the people who are right in the middle of the problem. So I like to brainstorm and give it a few minutes, and maybe give the individual time to think about. I'll pose a few questions and like to break it down and have a debate. And when you have the debate, the solution ends up coming up in conversation. And it's not like it's my way or the highway. This is what I think it should be done. It's more like let's work this together. And within a few minutes, we're able to break it down. So any complex problem, it could be organization wide, it could be a team size, it could be an individual one-on-one. But anything which is complex is something that gives me. I kind of thrive in an environment where you are thrown into a situation where there's a lot of problem solving that's required, because that keeps me on my toes and it's fun and it's challenging. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, because I think you spoke about brainstorming. Somewhere I thought you spoke about trying to get some kind of a consensus going. It's not like, that sort of I know it all just because I hold a particular position. So, almost inclusive, decision making, right?
Absolutely.
That's how, it came across to me. And then the same lady has asked another question, which is an addendum, but it's a little different. So she says, how do we recognize our passion? Now, let me flip that around and say, how did you recognize your passion? You said, you were a creative individual. You understood that you had either musical talents or interest in music, but then you've also, spoken about a variety of things. So as an individual in the audience, if someone has to recognize what their passion is, how does one get those cues? How does one go about it? And maybe how you went about it could be, a pointer or a cue.
Absolutely. So there's no right time or right age or right instrument or right, any one thing that is perfect for. It depends on what resonates with you. So for me, I had an opportunity to join the dance group in school. So I ended up trying that out. I didn't know when I was young that I would be good at it. Same thing happened with art class. I saw a poster somewhere on a summer holiday. I decided to take up two months of painting, where I made my own paintings on canvas. And then for music, it was actually my parents who encouraged me to take up the instrument. I played flute when I was very young in London, and I forgot that. I learned Kathak as well when I was in London, and that was just a few things that I kept trying along the way. So I didn't know until much later that I didn't become good with it overnight. I had to train hard to become a professional in the area I wanted to excel. So for music, it's my parents encouraged me to take up the instrument, and me being the diligent student and hardworking and consistent, it just came with the skill sets and my nature. I took up those lessons once a week, and then that just ended up turning into my passion. And then where I took it from there was in my hands. Sometimes the parents can guide you really well, your environment, your family members can guide you, or maybe you get a calling as well when you listen to some music, or you see a dance, or you see some drama, dramatics, or performing arts. It's a calling that comes like when you watch it, and until you don't try it out, there's no way for you to find out. It's really, the obstacle is only in your own mind, your own head. I feel like no one is really stopping you from outside. We have such good talent in this country, in India and abroad. Everything's available online. It's really about making time, having a balanced life, and just enjoying yourself. And that's when you end up finding what's the best, the most creative thing that you can try out that will help being a stress buster for you at some point.
Wonderful. So if I were to quickly paraphrase, what I heard you say is that initially it's good to have some kind of, encouragement and guidance and steer from parents if that were to come one's way. But along the way, one should be willing to, soak in the atmosphere, experiment a bit, and you really, discover as you go along as to what your passion truly is. And therefore, being in the moment and being willing to experiment may actually contribute to a person over a period of time discovering what their passion is. Right? That's the take that I have.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Let's move forward and sort of get the rail back on track. So, you spoke about investment in personal growth, right? And somewhere, do you feel, or is there any correlation, today in today's, day-to-day grind and very competitive world, many a time people feel that they just don't have the time to invest personally. And, they in fact feel that in trying to invest personally, they are moving away from their professional goals. However, from what you have shared with us and the viewers so far, it appears that you've actually achieved both. And you've done a lot of extracurriculars, a lot of personal stuff, which in a sense appears to me, right, as a viewer, that has sort of contributed to your professional growth. So I just wanted to sort of get your thoughts around that.
Absolutely. So the end goal for me was always to invest in myself so I can excel in my professional career. The more I kept investing in myself, in my personal time, and for my personal growth, I realized I was bringing a better self to the office every day, to the work that I was doing. I was being more productive, and my mind was working better. I was more intellectually stimulated, and I was giving back a lot more. So you're right about it. It's very difficult to prioritize your time, to balance it out, and to really move away from everything in your life and focus on yourself. We end up doing that right at the end, not the first thing that comes to mind. But just wanted to share, this is the right time for me, that I've been reading a couple of books, and one of the latest ones has been Ikigai. And like I mentioned earlier as well, it's a Japanese concept that means your reason for being. And Iki in Japanese means life, and Gai describes value or worth. So your Ikigai is actually your life purpose or your bliss. And when I read that book, I really understood and realized that, of course, it's important to excel in your professional life and focus a lot on, just doing your best there. But that can only come from your own life. Otherwise, you can burn out with time. And so waking up early and giving yourself that time in the morning, even if it's just 60 minutes in the morning and 60 minutes at night, and making sure that you have good relationships with your family members, with your friends, you're making time on the weekends, to spend time with the ones that you really care about, and having those important conversations are important for your social quotient as well. And all of this ends up tying in together, and it makes you a more successful professional. One of the other books that I have been reading is The Power of Now, and that teaches you how to be fully present in the moment, and to just it gives you some exercises on how you need to remind yourself that you're not living in the past, you're not living in the future, you're really living in the present, in the now. And I feel like it's very difficult for us we have to consciously do that. It does not come it doesn't come naturally, because the way we're wired, with the way things are going on in the world, on the news, what you hear, we have to like redesign and rewire our brains in a way to think of positive things, to cleanse your energy, and your spirit. So how do you bring yourself in the moment? Again, it's a daily practice, and it's a reminder, like you would exercise. You would need this kind of exercise as well, on reminding yourself that I'm here, I'm now, and let's make the most of this as if it's my last day. Not being dramatic, but it really does help. And they do say that in the books too, that if you feel this way, like you will not have any regrets as you grow older. You can make the most of it, and only good will come out of that. Another one, just to conclude on this question, is a book that I read on Think Like a Monk. And that reveals how do you overcome negative thoughts and habits, and access the calm and purpose that lies within our own life. So actually, all of us have the negative and the positive energy. The negative energy ends up coming up to the surface a lot more because of what's going on around us. But all of us have the potential to tap into the positivity. And if you're able to go in deep inside, and able to sink in with this side of yourself, you're able to enjoy and think like a monk, by not going to the hills, but actually living in the day-to-day, in the present, in the chaos, but actually still being calm and centered from inside.
Wonderful. So I'm now going to, slightly change tracks, because, you happen to work for such a, household name when it comes to, e-learning. So, and, we keep hearing about, and, given the fact that you are into talent acquisition, we keep hearing about skills of the future skills, right? Now, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's automation, and of course, it is expected that this is more centered around the youths, the millennials, and so on and so forth. But, there is also an existing workforce who are not millennials, who have years and years of experience, and who are also constantly being nudged, or they're hearing that, they also need to sort of reskill and upskill themselves.
Right.
Now, given the fact that you work for an e-learning platform, and you sort of, like you said, you've been teaching, students across ages, so maybe there are some learnings from there. But at the same time, like I said, arguably one of the largest, if not the largest, e-learning platforms. How do you think, e-learning can or has contributed towards reskilling and upskilling, not just the millennials and the Gen Zs, but, people like me and people of my generation, and, like you said, anyone who is not a millennial, older than that?
Sure.
How do you think, one can go about it, and how can e-learning contribute?
Absolutely. So at our organization as well, that's the reason why we've come up with such a large e-learning platform. It's an ecosystem to continuously train employees and students to make sure that you're learning on new skills and new technologies, which is absolutely paramount. Of course, it's not the new age skill sets like AI, robotics, and cloud data analytics, but a lot of soft skill sets like the innovative thinking, decision making, and empathetic leadership that require a deep diagnosis and implementation for the 21st century. So I would say that cultivating a culture of continual learning and proactively addressing a skill development is the need of the hour, not only for businesses, but for the economy at large. Technology-driven learning mechanism takes center stage in this process, right? So at BYJU'S, we lay a lot of emphasis on upskilling and entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is allowing employees the resources that they need to work on ideas and solve problems. So you end up becoming you're an entrepreneur working in an organization as an entrepreneur. So it is these entrepreneurs, like who are individuals who bring the entrepreneurial mindset and the skill sets to their jobs, and they are the ones who keep the organizations relevant and ahead of the curve. So fostering an entrepreneurial culture is beneficial to the business in many ways. And in terms of increased skills, accelerated offerings, and cost savings is a gaining a competitive advantage. So these are the few things that I would say that we're doing as an organization. And I feel it's a great way to go, no matter what background and experience that you bring to the table. But this mindset is important when you go to, I think, any work and any job, right? So that's my answer to your question.
Wonderful. So given the fact that, you have spent, a large part of your life in talent acquisition space, right? And, one of the things that I mentioned while introducing you, a lot of pride in having put this team together, right? Now, and you also mentioned that when you took up the role, that's when COVID had just about sort of come in, correct? So in that environment, whatever it was during COVID, to an emerging hybrid scenario, right? I'm sure you would agree that companies are opening up, and there is a hybrid scenario that appears to be the norm, at least for the moment, for many organizations, right?
Right.
Now, in that kind of a scenario, how have you seen, you know, uh, attitudes of organizations change? What has been your approach, right, when evaluating candidates, including senior candidates for organizations, and how has the twain actually met, or is there still a gap?
Right. So I think a lot of companies have evolved in the last 2 years. It's given us an opportunity to um, to change the interview process. Earlier, I felt like a lot of organizations were focusing a lot on meeting candidates in person and then checking the cultural fitment. Having one or two meetings and feeling that that's it. But now I feel with the pandemic and working from home and us being working remotely, we've ended up. I've seen companies having increased the number of rounds by introducing case studies or introducing problem statements to understand the person's ability to solve it, meet panel members or meet various functional heads in the company, which also, and I guess because we all are working virtually, it doesn't matter where the individual is. They have that we are able to match schedules in a way that they can meet the team, they can meet everyone, and they're also assessing the organization at the same time, not just the organization assessing the candidate. And instead of just taking a call on the first meeting or the second meeting, it could pan out over maybe 2 or 3 weeks. But in that time, we don't have to rely so much on the post of a candidate experience and making sure the candidate ends up resigning and makes sure they join the organization. But that relationship building that takes place in the first 3 weeks, it's more than enough because you understand the individual and vice versa, and that we know that there's no going back. So this is the changes that we have noticed across levels, and then so that change has been I would see like a significant shift in going online and working from home. We've shown a lot of empathy and realized that working in a structured way would and having processes in place would make sure that the work would continue seamlessly. So we managed to seamlessly transition from an offline mode into an online mode within just a few weeks. And our team was all based in one city. They all went back to their hometowns. How do you ensure you continue you manage to take care of everyone in your team, all the employees of the organization? How the HR plays a very, very crucial role. You're showing a lot of empathy, working in collaboration. You're taking care of your employees because that was a very, very tough time the last 2 years, right? I mean, you end up, this is your work family at the end of the day. It's not just office, but you're really spending so much time with each other. So those transitions have taken place, and now we've all learned a new way of working. So we've come into a hybrid model and realize it's not the end of the world if you're not going to be able to show up to office. Everybody's online. Everyone has learned their own accountability, the ownership that they take in the work that they do. And I think all people have realized the importance of managing your personal time and your professional time, because we just have more value for life and for health and relationships, and it's equally important. And so I feel like those two things are something that's my takeaway.
Wonderful. So I'm going to probe a little deeper and take you back, because you did mention the importance of soft skills, not just the hard technical skills. And here is a question from the audience, and this particular question says, does strong soft skills in the areas of communication, critical thinking, or resilience. Uh, in your opinion, do they hold key to success in the future? So they basically want to get your thoughts around this.
So I feel like it's a part of it. I would not say I would give too much weightage on it. It's definitely a part of it. When you're a holistic individual, a top management professional, middle management, it doesn't really matter whatever role you bring to the table. It's actually the entire individual, all the skill sets. So it's important to be good, like maybe learn a few things and then you master one or two as your two main areas. So when we talk about innovative thinking, it comes with experience. It comes with putting yourself in situations where you have to think outside the box. It's not something that you can learn in college or by studying. It's about when you put yourself in a situation, you can learn it. So critical thinking, again, comes with experience. These are extremely important skill sets when you're leading a team, because you could be faced with challenges on a day-to-day basis, but doesn't mean that itself on its own would lead to success. You need to be strong technically. You need to be good you need to be a subject matter expert or domain expert as well. These skill sets just help you become a better leader, a better individual, and a better team manager. So decision making, empathetic leadership, these are like my personal values. I feel like you work collaborative, you work in an inclusive environment, and that's the way to move forward. Not move forward alone, but really move forward together and just be stronger.
All right, thank you very much. Moving forward, yet another question coming up. This one is aiming to ask you that in the current environment, given the fact that you interview so many people, right, over the last so many years, and especially in the context of Corona and COVID, have you noticed a greater emphasis towards reskilling and upskilling, and more sort of focused towards what might be the future demands or the future skills? Have has that sort of come across as an observation for you?
Yes, absolutely. So I would like to say that businesses are going through quite the digital transformation. And we've seen the adoption of automation, the emergence of newer technologies in the last 2 years, and the demand for new and future-proof skills is rising. So definitely important for organizations to look for individuals, and also this is the right time for us to bridge the gaps. So I would say it's imperative that we do encourage our young workforce to adapt to a continuous learning approach, focus on specific skills necessary for their current and their future roles. Those skills could be related to their current role or a new role they would like to enter into, could be in the form of learning online, could be through courses, it could be through talks, it could be through webinars. But it's really important now more than ever to keep upskilling yourself. And I feel like the right combination of learning and training and having the relevant on the job experience allows the individual to just have a holistic profile. And that's something that I've noticed, now more than ever, that it's very important for us to do that as candidates when you're looking for a new job or a new opportunity.
All right, thank you very much. Staying on the same theme of Corona, hybrid working, and so on and so forth, one of the things that we keep hearing about, given that one of the verticals that we have in our organization is also employment, is organizations are now very, very open to what I would call borderless hiring. So, they're saying, talent can actually be anywhere and talent can be hired from anywhere, right?
Yes.
What has been your experience, and what are your thoughts around that?
I think that that's also very specific to the function. Let's say if you're in a function where everything is managed virtually, like you're looking at online sales, where you could be sitting anywhere and you could be making calls or being video calls. Of course, it doesn't have an impact. But if you're in the supply chain or the collections team, where all of you need to be sitting together, needs to be dispatching from the same headquarter office, and of course you will be required to be in the office. However, digital marketing can be managed from any remote location. Whereas ATL, BTL marketing, you need to be, if you're shooting, you need to be in a central location, like in Mumbai, where most of the teams are, then again, you need to be working from that location. So my short answer to this question would be, it depends on the function, but absolutely, we've realized that you don't have to be physically present every single day and every moment for every discussion, every conversation. Everything can be scheduled, everything can be done online, unless you have those important discussions, board meetings, of course, or you need to be in office to be with your team in person for, like I mentioned, certain functions. So it's a hybrid model. The companies are definitely evolving to working both ways and realizing it is borderless, and individuals can come from any industry. In fact, that's something I've noticed in the last few years, that companies are more open to hiring individuals from other industries, because they bring a completely new perspective. And earlier we used to think that unlearning and relearning might be challenging. Now we've realized that they come with a completely fresh canvas, and they come with a fresh approach, because they've done it in a certain industry and coming into a new one, versus having somebody from a competitor would be more challenging. So that's my answer to that question.
Wonderful. So if you recollect, I started the show by saying that one of the things that anyone who sort of interacted with you, certainly at a professional level, they talk about the amazing energy levels that you bring to the table. And I think that is very, very evident right through this show. So thank you very much for staying on course, because I think that's who you are. But the other thing which people have also spoken about is the fact that as an individual, you're very receptive to inputs. But what has further caught my eye is you demonstrate unbiased judgment. Now, I would be very interested, for the benefit of our audience, to understand what constitutes unbiased judgment for you and how you demonstrate that on a consistent basis.
Sure. So I feel like everyone has their own story to say. You might hear a story from a third person, but you have to hear it from the horse's mouth. It's important to put your preconceived notions aside and listen to the individual on what they have to say, and question. And it's important to speak to the individual directly to know their side of the story. I've seen in many situations where they would be a Chinese whisper, they would be a rumor, and something so small can lead to something really big. But my way of doing things would be going to the individual and having a heart to heart, instead of beating around the bush, and really understanding like what's going on, and being very upfront and very to the point, and discussing it and saying that this is my opinion, what is yours. And if in case there was a mistake that has taken place, explaining and making the individual understand and realize that this is what has happened. But we all are learning on a daily basis. This is a learning process. So I hope you understand that what we've gone through. Let's find a way to clean this up today, but let's try to also make sure that we don't repeat the same mistake again in the future. So again, biases come when you have preconceived notions, when you have like a certain opinion about an individual. I mean, who am I to judge, right? I mean, all of us have come here. We have our own purpose in life. We all are doing the best that we can on a daily basis, professionally and personally. And so I just don't feel it's my place. And if anything comes up, anybody comes to me for any opinion or any advice, I'm always up for it, because I feel like, what's the point of having the wisdom and the knowledge if you're not able to pass it on? So that's my answer to that question.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm conscious of the time. We're probably at around the 42nd or 43rd minute or thereabouts. So I'm going to sort of bring this show to a close by asking a couple of questions asked by the audience. Another one which sort of very interesting and caught my eye, and I'll sort of go slow over it. This one says, in today's business world, what can be done to create opportunities for people in vulnerable spaces? Now, I'm not also entirely sure what that means, but I would leave it to you to interpret it in the manner that you deem fit. I'll repeat: what can be done to create opportunities in today's, I'm assuming, cutthroat business world, to create opportunities for people in vulnerable spaces?
I'm also not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure what he or she is trying to ask. But I think my interpretation would be that how do we make sure that you have you find the right opportunity for you at different stages in life. I've noticed that, and that could be a situation where you have to relocate to a new location, or for any reason you just tied the knot and you're trying to find a new job, or maybe you've just you're just entered motherhood. So I've noticed that a lot of people get into such situations and they feel they're out of the race. But I've also spoken to a lot of people, and do you think that's the right interpretation of the question, Anirudh, or do you think we should talk about something else?
See, my sense is this is more about how can, let's say, maybe more underrepresented people, or maybe perhaps people with some form of vulnerability, or basically it's about inclusion. How can we be more inclusive? How can we probably encourage organizations to be more inclusive about hiring? Let's say they've asked for a particular skill, or maybe a qualification. Maybe the qualification is not there, maybe the experience is there. So
Right.
how, in that way, the organization or the hiring manager is being more inclusive. So how
Right.
can we encourage greater inclusion is my take of the question. Again, I am not so sure, but that's what my take is.
So I feel like every company has their own philosophy, and companies are definitely evolving as we go into looking out for diversity candidates, looking out for candidates who bring different skill sets to the table, and not being too hung up on the education qualifications or the university names. It's also they're trying to get into finding out what the individual brings to the table. However, it depends from the size of the organization. Now, if you're looking at a very large company and they have a specific role in mind, it's very difficult, very challenging to do that screening process, as we use artificial intelligence, and it's done through a tool where the technology matches the candidate with the job description, and they go through a screening process, yes or no. And only until they don't qualify the first stage, they're not going to be able to go to round 2, which is the in-person interview. However, in organizations that have a fewer roles to fill, and where they have a smaller team where you have a larger role, in those cases, definitely seeing a difference and a change that companies are open to meeting individuals and seeing what do they bring to the table beyond just the paper, beyond just the education. And so it's important to get your foot in the door, having the skill sets. It's definitely, I would say that if you come for an interview and say, this is my first job, I don't have anything, it's very challenging to, unless you have a personal contact. You will definitely need something to start with, and then from there on, your career is in your own hands. How you shape your career, how you learn on the day-to-day job, that's up to you. The individual that you work with, the most that you make every day. But definitely taking up courses is something that I've noticed a lot of people are doing along with their work, along with their jobs on the weekends, in the evenings. They could be part-time courses, they could be global, they could be in India, they could be short-time, but that just you end up learning those skill sets, which go a long way. And I would say that would help a lot of candidates as well. Like when it'll be a great conversation starter as a part of the interview process. But education and companies, it's right in the beginning, it helps you get in. After that, it's really up to you. And if you feel there's a gap at some point in the career, attending more webinars and networking, going for events, joining clubs. We have a lot of clubs like Leap Club as well, is for all women. We've got WiTalks. We've got so many other clubs where we have network of individuals, professionals who are helping each other. And sometimes, you might not realize you might help one person today, the other person might help you the other day, and really, like, it's about building connection with each other. So those are the kind of tools that I've learned over the years, which I feel is quite beneficial. And again, if you don't invest in yourself, it's very challenging to keep up with the way the world is going and how fast we're growing.
Two most wonderful thoughts, Sarika, that you've left our audience with. I mean, I wish we could have, elongated this conversation longer, and we could have talked about the importance of investing in self and networking, but maybe that we will reserve for another day on another session. But on behalf of our audience and on behalf of WiTalks, I'd like to thank you for being in the moment with us, and for absolutely enthralling our audience, and for sharing, all that you did on today's show. So thank you very, very much. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for your time, and for everybody who's watching this video now or later. Thanks for being here. I will be sharing my contact details as well. If anybody would like to contact me for any other questions, I'd be happy to do that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Bye. Have a good one.
Bye. Bye.